Right, so I just want to preface this by saying I'm using like what I think used to be Movie Maker, but Movie Maker doesn't really exist anymore. This is like Movie Maker's fucking retarded third cousin. And I'm using footage I've recorded, using shadow play, and then audio I've recorded separately because I'm a fucking monkey and I had a look at this enough to work out how to just record everything simultaneously. So, you know, don't expect anything amazing. It's a shit show. Right, so I've seen a lot of wonky shit other people have been experiencing with the game. Personally, my experience of bugs, like actual bugs, like things obviously not working in a way they're designed to, it's pretty much been limited to the occasional NPC who has mastered the state of Zen and begins to levitate. And that seems to be, quite honestly, a sort of normal thing to some degree with a lot of games, especially these sort of open world games, so I didn't consider that too serious. Most of what I'm going to talk about here isn't really bugs per se. There's plenty of other people covering bugs, especially the shit show of these consoles, so I'll leave that to them. My biggest problems with the game fall into the category of why. So, a really good example of this, if you haven't already watched the gameplay reveal they did back in, I think, 2018. But that video, the beginning portion of it at least, uses what is now the sort of very first or tutorial mission of the game to show off, what they're up to. The layout and everything's pretty much the same, except for one weird change that has no apparent reason. In the reveal video they did, there's a little balcony side passage that you can use to flank behind the sort of boss of the mission. In the release version of the game, that balcony still exists. There's even a vending machine out there that you can hack if you look through the window in the right spot. But there's no way to get out there. Windows have all been sealed with these immovable shutters. And it's just, why? It doesn't really change anything except sort of reducing the options the player has to deal with that particular enemy. And it's not like it took them, or would have taken them more development time to somehow make that work, because it actually went back and spent more development time sealing off this little part of the level that was already in the game. So, I'm not really sure what the fuck went on there. Now, the funny or kind of sad thing is that this seems to be sort of representative of a lot of issues that I have with the game. Like, yeah, it's a shit show on consoles, and there are more bugs in the game than what's on my windscreen in January. But besides the bugs, even if you fucked off all the bugs, there's a lot of things that just, you look at the way it's been done, or something that was, as in the example with the balcony, removed or changed, and you ask yourself why, and you just really can't figure out why. Some of it is probably things that the developers didn't know how the hell to make it work properly or as intended, which is my suspicion with the removal of the mantis blades climbing. Then there's things like this balcony where there's just no reason that I can figure out. All it really seems to do is arbitrarily reduce what the player can do. And the funny thing about that is there's not really a huge amount that the player does. Besides a few of the main story sort of missions, the majority of what the player does pretty much involves running to a location, usually somewhere outdoors, and killing a bunch of gang members that are just sort of hanging around waiting for someone to shoot them. If it's one of the like NCPD missions, there might then also be a container or something you have to loot. But the loot itself is a whole other problem. It's like they made a very small collection of a few sort of relatively generic weapons and then just slapped Diablo-style randomized stats on top of it. The majority of the cybernetics are the same sort of thing, with very few actually giving the player any sort of new functionality or abilities, and all except for 3 of the slots, being the arms, legs, and some of the cyber decks, functioning is pretty much just stat modifiers. Most, aside from the arms, do nothing to impact player appearance, which is also kind of insulting when you see Maelstrom NPCs who are running around looking like the office paper shredder with rabies. the arm items are nothing special, but at least they're a new weapon. But even then, that's not really that great, because it's just sort of like, oh cool, so now instead of having, say, 2 guns and a melee weapon equipped, I can now just equip 3 guns and fucking, you know, pop some knives out my arms when I need them. The gorilla arms have no use in opening locked doors or any other sort of feat of strength that you might expect. The mantis blades can't be used for any kind of climbing shenanigans, as they originally again showed in that gameplay reveal, so any dream of role-playing a big fuck-off spider in an Australian bathroom is pretty much dead. Really, the whole thing at the end of the day pretty much just leaves me sort of wondering what the fuck they did with the amount of development time the game had. So, like, sure, the game looks nice, but what was everyone else doing while the visuals department was working? There's plenty of people all over the evil corporate developer bandwagon, which is especially ironic given the theme of the game. But I feel like there's surely got to have been something more that went on here. Sort of like how Mass Effect Andromeda, I think it was, had all sorts of fucking dramas where they were being made to use software that they were both unfamiliar with and wasn't really suited to what they were trying to do. It just doesn't make sense that they had something like 8 years of development time. And ultimately what we ended up with is sort of like fucking budget Grand Theft Auto with very light RPG elements to it. It just doesn't make any fucking sense. So, you know, just fucking comment or something. Let me know what you guys reckon, because to me personally, the game hasn't necessarily been terrible or anything. It's been alright, and maybe I'm just lucky because, like I said, I've actually had pretty small experience with bugs, really. And maybe I'm just fortunate in that sense, but most of the problem with the game hasn't exactly been that it's bad. It's more just looking at it and seeing how it could have or should have been so much better. It just doesn't really add up.